Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be heading over to the Sun Belt Conference to take a look at the Georgia Southern Eagles, who finished 8-5 in 2024. They capped off their season with an appearance in New Orleans Bowl, and they wrapped up their 2025 spring practice with their spring game on April 5th. We have some special guests joining us today. GATA Talk is the podcast dedicated to all things Georgia Southern Eagles football. It's for the fans, by the fans. He is Matt. He is Cody. Together, they are GATA Talk. They can be found at GATA Talk Podcast on X. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
We appreciate you guys joining us again for another season of our Worker Bee series. But for those who are just turning into the G5 Hive for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how long you've been covering Georgia Southern football? Matt, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so Cody and I started this thing back in 2018, right after kind of a dark era in Georgia Southern football history, and the first year of then head coach Chad Lunsford. And we've been doing it ever since, entering our 8th season now. We're introducing a video version of the podcast for the first time. So starting up the YouTube channel this week, actually, and getting that rolling. But yeah, we're just, Cody and I went to high school together and college together, obviously, both proud alumni of Georgia Southern. And we just wanted to do this as a passion project, and there was a need for it at the time. And, you know, we've got a loyal listener base, and we appreciate them. And Eagle Nation is hungry for just kind of real raw fan banter and hot takes.
Cody, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Matt hit the nail on the head pretty well there. But yeah, no, we're just kind of for fans and just kind of give just the raw, honest emotion of, you know, whether it's game, practice, or outside noise or stories. And no, we just feel like we just want to give an honest take as to what's happening, whether it's right or wrong. Our fans usually let us know pretty quick. But yeah, it's been the last 8 seasons have been pretty great in terms of doing this podcast for the football team and for the fans.
Well, let's move over to some Eagles football talk. Matt, for those not familiar with the Eagles offensive style, how would you describe it?
Yeah, we're a spread air raid attack. Been that way every year since Clay Helton came on board in 22. Obviously, that was a 180 from the offense we ran before, which was a spread option attack. And then obviously our history back all the way to the FCS days in the 80s and 90s is the flex bone under center triple option. So we've been a run heavy team for most of our modern day history, but we've been a pass heavy team the past 3 years going into year 4 of Clay Helton.
Well, let's get into a position where it all starts on offense, and that's quarterback. This room returns 2024 starter J.C. French, while they see backup Dexter Williams, the second, head over to Kennesaw State. Cody, how did French look in the spring?
He looked really well. You could tell that there was growth there from last year into the spring game. And honestly, I felt really good about the progress. I know that the bowl game is something to be less than desired from the fans with the 4 interceptions, and obviously kind of not how you want to end the season. But in the spring game, he looked really good. He went through his possessions, seemed to find the open man, and really was able to move the ball down the field. So if you watch the spring game, I feel like you should be really positive about French under center.
Well, Cody, you talked about seeing some of that growth. This will be the first offseason where JC comes in knowing he's kind of like he's the guy. What growth are you hoping to see from him this season?
Well, honestly, a couple of things. One, leadership, being able to just kind of command the offense instead of just trying to get the play out and, you know, hit the right receiver or make the right read. Really take ownership of the offense and kind of be that general on the field. And then also, too, just being able to make quicker decisions and not seem such like a deer in the headlights. I don't really think that was an issue last year, but you can tell with his first year playing and probably 2 years since high school, that there was some, a change or at least an adjustment to the game speed. And so you hope to see that that's not so much the case this year, that really kind of becomes he gets used to that game speed and is able to kind of be able to lead the offense a lot better.
Well, Matt, for those not familiar with JC's playing style, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so I've been playing a lot of the new college football video game, right? and on that, there's Road to Glory as one of the modes where you create your player and do the position and all the attributes and stuff. And with the quarterback, one of the archetypes, if you will, is backfield creator. And I feel like that really captures French's play style. So he's not a pure pocket passer, but I wouldn't really call him like your traditional dual threat either. Yes, he can tuck in a run. He can create with his legs. He can do some zone read and things like that. He, like Cody said, he's getting better at getting rid of the ball quick, going through his progressions. But yeah, he's that kind of Mahomes style, obviously not the same level, but Mahomes style where like he can make something happen in the backfield and tuck in a run if he needs to.
Matt, is there any word as to kind of who has a leg up on the number 2 spot behind French?
Yeah, if we had to say today, it's hard to say, but if we had to say today, probably Tyler Budge. He's been with the program for a couple years now, still a young kid, but he's looked good in the times that we've seen him in scrimmages and spring games. Got a talented arm. The coaching staff have been raving about him since he arrived, I believe 2 years ago. So probably him. I know, we obviously brought in Turner Helton from Western Kentucky, which is Clay Helton's son, and Tyson Helton, the head coach at Western Kentucky's nephew. And obviously that, there was a lot of talks of nepotism and like things like that. Cody and I talked about this the other night. We honestly don't project Helton to be really in play for certainly not the starting job, but probably not that number 2 spot either. I think he's really just there for support. Obviously things can go wrong. Players can't progress the way you hope they will. Injuries happen, so you never know. So it's great to have someone that's capable like Turner Helton there. But yeah, I would say of the guys we have on the roster today that were there in the spring, probably Budge. But we do have some talented freshmen coming in out of high school that could potentially make a play for that in fall camp.
Well, Cody, if Tyler Budge kind of has the leg up there for the number 2 spot, for those not familiar with his playing style, how would you describe it?
Similar to JC French. That's kind of how I would roll with it. Again, kind of like how Matt said, he's not a dual threat guy, but if he needs to make something happen with his legs, he can. He does have a really good arm for a young kid, so he's able to air it out and throw the ball down the field, and he can throw it over defense if he needs to. So I would say more pocket passer, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's just going to stay in the pocket. If he needs to run, he can.
Well, let's move over to the running game. And this staff leaned on Jalen White last season. He accounted for 57% of the running back rushing attempts in 2024. He has graduated, leaving this room to O.J. Arnold and David Mbadinga. That duo combined for 121 attempts, 553 yards, and 7 touchdowns a season ago. Cody, how did the running back room look in the spring, and did anyone stand out to you?
They look really good. Now, our number 1 and number 2 guys, Arnold and Badinga, did not play. I don't even think they practiced at all during the spring. They were healing injuries from the previous season. But the three guys that did participate, they all looked really, really good. Quick, fast, hits the hole hard. Probably the one that stood out the most to me was Gibbs. I feel like he could be both the guy that hits the hole and be the first and second down guy, as well as be your third down back and catch anything out of the backfield.
Well, Matt, I mentioned in 2024 that the staff really leans on White. Do you expect something similar here in 2025? And if so, who do you think that'll be?
Yeah, I would give the nod to OJ slightly over Badinga. I think there'll be a pretty even split. And what I hope, and I think most of our fans hope, that we didn't see all the time last year, whether it was White, Badinga, or OJ, is to play the hot hand. We do have a lot of talent in that running back room. So regardless of who starts, who's designated RB1 versus RB2, whoever's just feeling it and having a good game and hitting the holes and having that breakaway speed, I would just continue to feed them.
Matt, how would you describe like the skill sets of those two guys? How they're similar and how they're different?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say they're pretty similar, but I know like OJ's always been kind of a speedster. I believe he has kind of put on some weight and muscle. That was something that we saw out of White too. I mean, White coming in as a freshman looked very different than he did graduating as a senior. So I think he's a smaller guy. But I think he's trying to kind of follow that model a little bit. Badinga can, he's also got breakaway speed, but, I think he's maybe more comfortable running through tackles. Cody, correct me if you disagree there. But, he can take those hits and keep on going.
Cody, if you had a guess.
I don't disagree with that. Badinga can really hit the hole when he needs to.
Cody, if you had to take a guess today, who gets that first running back carry against Fresno State, who would that be?
OJ Arnold. I don't think that's really like a hard question to answer. I think it will be OJ Arnold unless there's some sort of lingering injury that we just don't know about.
Yeah.
But everything points to that OJ Arnold will be the starting running back from Fresno State.
Well, let's turn our attention over to the wide receivers. This room will look to replace production lost from L.V. Bunkley Shelton and the Eagles' number one wideout, Derwin Burgess Jr. The duo combined for 89 receptions for 987 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. This room's highlighted by the return of two guys who played a lot in the slot, Dallin Cobb and Josh Dallas. This dynamic duo accounted for 98 receptions and 1,213 yards and 10 touchdowns last season. Matt, this is one of the more experienced receiving rooms in all of the conference. What are the expectations for this wide receiver room heading into the season?
High, extremely high. It's the deepest room I think we've had under Helton, and reasonably so. It's the fourth year to kind of build this thing both through the portal and through high school. But yeah, between the transfers and the inside receivers we have returning, and Dallas and Cobb, I think. They're poised for a really big year. We had two guys on the All Sun Belt first team, All Sun Belt team, one on the first team, one on the second team, Dallas on the first, Cobb on the second. I think of those two, one of them is a 1,000-yard receiver, but the other one has a really big year as well. Maybe not like crazy video game yardage, but probably like 6 to 8 touchdowns. And then, I know we're going to get into kind of the outside receivers as well. But yes, high expectations, which should definitely help out the outlook for JC French.
Well, Cody, did JC seem to be targeting anyone particularly like early and often in the spring?
I think Camden Brown is the guy to look at. He'll probably be the number one outside receiver. That's the transfer from Auburn. He's a big receiver too. I think he's 6'3", 6'4",
Yep.
Over 200 pounds. Can go up and grab any 50-50 ball that we need to. I look for JC French to target him early and often.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the slot seems to be well handled with Dallas and Cobb there. Matt, do you envision who do you see on the outside replacing L.V. Bunkley Shelton and Derwin Burgess? Cody just talked about Camden Brown being one of those. Who do you think would be the other?
Dylan Gary, who is another transfer from a very different school, so West Georgia, which is, I believe, an FCS school now. They recently moved up from Division II, but he was their wide receiver one last year. had around 700 yards, I believe. He's quick guy, playmaker. Hearing really good things out of spring about him. They did a interview with our outside receivers coach, and he was just giving glowing reviews of Dylan Gary.
Well, Cody, in your eyes, is there anyone standing out to be that potential wide receiver 1 in 2025?
Well, wide receiver 1, I think go back to Brown. Kendra Brown, I think he's going to be your wide receiver 1. And then obviously you have your slot guys that could possibly also lead in receiving yards and or touchdowns. But I think Brown's going to probably be a favorite target for J.C. French in this season.
Matt, if you were to describe how the tight ends are utilized in this offense to someone that's never caught a Georgia Southern game, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a pain point, I would say. We've had a lot of talent there that's come in out of the transfer portal. We had a big tight end out of Upshaw,
Kentucky.
out of Kentucky. Thank you, Cody. And then we had out of Auburn last year. Thank you, Cody. So, Tyler Fromm last year, little brother of Jake Fromm, UGA quarterback. And, he had a pretty decent year last year. The Upshaw kid, I think, not underwhelmed, not to his fault. He just didn't get a lot of targets. So we've got Helms coming in, a transfer, River Helms from Western Kentucky, where Clay Helton's brother coaches. And he was utilized a lot there by the Hilltoppers, and I hope that he'll get used early and often, especially in like short yardage situations and red zone. But I would say we've had a lot of depth and talent at that position, but it's been underutilized.
Matt, how did the tight ends look in the spring, and was there anyone that kind of stood out?
Yeah, so Cody attended the spring game, but I have talked to him. I live in Colorado, but he gave me a thorough report on everything. And I believe Helms played, I think. And outside of that, I mean, I know, we have
the transfer from Georgia State.
Yeah, the transfer from Georgia State.
Green.
And then Bo Johnson.
No, Elijah Wood.
Okay.
I mean, not Elijah Wood, Elijah Walton. Sorry.
Elijah Walton. Yeah.
Yeah, those three guys will be our top 3 tight ends. They all look good in the spring. And to be honest, I think with the depth that we had there, we should use our tight ends a lot more than what we have in the last 2 seasons. Possibly running a lot more 12 personnel. Because we have the depth there. And again, we have two guys who have a lot of experience in that position coming from Georgia State and from Western Kentucky. So I would be very surprised if we don't utilize our tight ends this season. And I think that they will probably be used a lot, especially in red zone situations.
Well, the offensive line is in pretty good shape heading into 2025. The Eagles return their left guard, Pashon Wimbley, and right guard, Caleb Cook. A pair of centers who played a lot also returned in Chance Carroll and Chandler Strong. The room also had good depth. And to me, I guess it looks like the staff likes what they have, is it didn't really look like they added anybody in the portal. So, Matt, what are your expectations for this offensive line in 2025?
Yeah, really high. Right up there with the wide receiver group as far as the highest level of confidence, I think. And obviously everything runs through them, right? So, I think we are well positioned to have a really strong year because of the experience, the leadership, and just the talent and depth of that offensive line.
Cody, let's say this offensive line just dominates in 2025. Their success is due in large part to whom in this room?
The interior, Cook and Wimbley and whoever the center is going to be. I think that's where our strength is at. My only concern with their offensive line is honestly the tackles. And that's just because I don't think they've really had that much experience in terms of starts. But we'll see how they gel together. But, yeah, it's going to be because of our interior line.
Matt, who does this room look to as their, the leader of the offensive line?
I'd say the interior line, like Cody just said. So Keyshawn Wembley and Caleb Cook, both all preseason All Sun Belt players. So yeah, I think it starts with them. I mean, I've heard good things about Chandler Strong and Chance Carroll as well, but definitely Wembley and Cook.
All right, Matt, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Oh, that's good. Probably Camden Brown, because I mean it's kind of unfair, right? Because he's a transfer, so it's like he's starting from nothing. But yeah, probably him. I think another popular choice might be either Dalen Cobb or Josh Dallas. I think you could argue that Josh Dallas's like coming out party was last year, but again, I have confidence he's going to put up big numbers. So just depending on your definition of like breakout, I think it's going to be one of the wide receivers, I would say. You could possibly argue OJ Arnold. You could also argue JC French, but I think either Brown or Josh Dallas would be my picks.
Cody, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who you got?
Okay, I'm going to go with somebody that probably hasn't played. And it's just going to depend on how many touches he gets. But I think Terrence Gibbs has a real shot at kind of being that breakout guy that, didn't see a lot of playing time the last 2 seasons. And then all of a sudden he can, get in a groove, and all of a sudden he's worked his way up and having to be in the starting, rotation of running backs. So I would not be surprised if he has a breakout year this season.
Well, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. Matt, for those not familiar with Georgia Southern's defense, can you describe their style and scheme that they run?
Yeah, so under Brandon Bailey, they kind of run a multiple scheme. They like to play fast and aggressive. It's all kind of predicated on forced turnovers. That's something that Bailey's been really strong at or fixated on, I would say, since his time at Buffalo and then coming down last year. So yeah, I think fast, physical, and just go after the ball and create turnovers.
Well, let's take a look at the defensive position groups, and we'll start with the guys up front along the defensive line. This room will look to replace some pieces on this line, but fans can be excited to see Latrell Bullard back on the interior and a quartet of edge rushers in MJ Stroud, Davion Rhodes, Deshaun Davis, and Jacob Ferguson. Obviously, losing guys like Isaac Walker off the edge and El-Haj Fall on the interior is a big deal. But, Cody, what are your expectations for this unit heading into 2025?
I expect them to try to increase their productivity in terms of tackle for loss and sacks. I think that should be I feel like the last couple of seasons we haven't really kind of, been great in that area. So I'm hoping that is a point of emphasis and that we see those numbers go up. As you said, I think there's a lot of good returning production coming in from that coming forward that offensive line. But the defensive tackle position is something that I think is probably the weakest link that we have. But it helps when you have Bullard on the other side. Really man among man, how big he is. And so, but no, I think that's where I'm hoping to see the increased production is really, like Matt said, just kind of creating that havoc and actually being disruptive in terms of, stopping running backs in the backfield as well as trying to get after the quarterback.
Cody, of the guys that were there in the spring, did anyone kind of stand out for you on this defensive line?
Yeah, Sika did. He had a great spring game, and I don't know where he'll fall in the rotation in terms of defensive line, but he looked really, really good, fast and aggressive, and was able to, you can't really sack in a spring game, but I think he had a couple of those touch sacks that you can get. So he really stood out to me in the spring.
Matt, who do you feel is the key to success of this defensive line in 2025?
I mean, I think the easy answer is probably Latrell Bullard. He, again, as a guy that was preseason All Sun Belt, I think big expectations. Like Cody said, he's a monster out there, but he can move for a big guy. He's also seen, he's a veteran now, and he's seen as very much a leader, not just on the line, but for the whole defense. So probably him, and then I'll also throw in Davion Rhodes. I think coming off the edge, he's a guy that has a lot of talent that I'm hearing good things about out of spring. And yeah, I think that pass rush is going to be critical. So we're going to need somebody to step up there.
Well, guys, I have some concerns with the linebacking group. Obviously, losing first-team all-conference linebacker at Sunbelt. Defensive Player of the Year, Marquise Watson-Trent to Nebraska doesn't help. But this room also graduated Davon Gilmore and Reed Dedman. This 2025 room is highlighted by the return of Devin Hicks. Matt, what should we expect from this linebacking room here in 2025?
Yeah, I agree. It's probably a question mark. It has been the last couple of years, but I honestly think there's a lot of talent and depth there. Just maybe not a ton of experience and household names yet. So I actually feel pretty good about that group, better than I did actually going into last year. And because it really was like one guy last year, where now I feel like, I can't slot in like who the two linebackers are going to be, or if we're playing three, who those three guys might be. But I feel like we have a rotation of guys that could go in there and do a good job.
Well, obviously, it's not fair of me to ask who's the next Watson-Trent in this room. So let me ask you this, Cody. Who in this room do you anticipate making their name known here in 2025?
The transfer from App State, and his name's escaping me, but
Brendan Harrington.
Okay, he's produced quite well at App State, and for him to transfer to us is a big deal, especially since we did lose Marquez Watson-Trent. And I think he'll probably should step in that natural leadership role that was obviously, is gone now because Trent's off to Nebraska. So I really see him probably needing to step up in that position, not just performance-wise, but also leadership-wise.
Well, let's move over to the secondary. And I feel really good about cornerback, but safety position kind of caught my eye as DeAndre Morris, Cameron Williams, TJ Smith, Tyrell Davis have all graduated, and Mark Stampley II is off to Houston. That is 5 of their top 6 safeties in terms of snaps played in 2024. Matt, what are your expectations for the secondary as we head into fall camp?
Yeah, that might be the biggest question mark, maybe. But I think again, we have some talent there, just not a lot of like production and experience. So I think they'll rely on the corners and hopefully rely on that defensive line and the linebackers to get that rush and make things easier. But yeah, I would say that's kind of the blurriest area maybe of of the entire defensive unit. I don't know if Cody agrees.
Well, yeah, there's some question marks there with the secondary. I honestly don't think the secondary is going to drop off that much. In fact, it may kind of improve. There are a couple of positions, I think, the nickel and the strong safety. I could have that wrong. Maybe where there's some new guys there that just haven't had a lot of experience, or at least only 1 year of experience. But no, I think when it comes to that area of our secondary, I think that we'll be all right. We'll just have to see as the season goes along. But to me, if you're looking at the biggest question marks, it would go linebacker and then the safeties. But I think the safety should probably be just fine.
Cody, who do you expect to see out there with Justin Myers come week 1?
That's a great question. If I knew, I could probably be a collegiate coach. Honestly, I really don't know. I think that's a position, that's still up for grabs. There's a couple of guys that probably have a good shot at it. And honestly, we won't know until they go out there for Fresno State. And again, that's probably the biggest position that has the biggest question mark. And then, and so I can't honestly answer that question, but just know that I think whoever it is, I know that there's athletes there and we should be okay. But we'll see.
Matt, I mentioned the strong cornerback play earlier, and all the guys returning in 2025 in a pass-happy league. How important is it to have guys like Tracy Hill Jr., Chance Gamble, Aiden Jackson, and Dorian Smith back in 2025?
Huge, yeah. I think they're kind of the mirror of the wide receiver room, right? I mean, it just like super athletic guys can fly all over the field, yeah, they each kind of bring something a little different to the table too. Like Chance Gamble's kind of your ball hawk, Tracy Hill's kind of your coverage guy. Like, so yeah, I'm really excited about that room, similar to kind of the wide receiver core. I think it's going to be an essential part of the defense and an essential part of our overall success.
Cody, if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who you got?
Chance Gamble. He kind of showed up last year, then was injured for a few games, and then had to play with the club pretty much for the rest of the season. But as long as he stays healthy, I would not be surprised at all if he's not a first-team Sun Belt defensive player of the year, or on the first-team Sun Belt.
Now, Matt, same question. If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who you got?
That's not Chance Gamble. I mean, Cody stole mine. But no, I mean, I think, maybe Sam Bullard, that wouldn't be, well, stand out or breakout. I stand out, yeah, Bullard. Breakout, I would say maybe one of the edge guys. So like, again, Davion Rhodes comes to mind.
Also, again, the transfer from App State, I think he could also be a guy that kind of breaks out too. He should definitely have his fair share of playing time and be on the field a lot. And again, if he steps up, I mean, we could be talking about him leading the tackles in the conference this year. So, I mean, he's another one that could really break out this season.
All right, Cody, we've talked offense, we've talked defense. Now let's move over to the special teams. Cody, how are the special teams units looking, and are there any concerns?
I wouldn't say concerns. I think field goal kicker is probably our biggest question mark. I know that we got another recruit from I think it's the Australian kicking school again, to kind of fill that void. And so we'll see how that plays out. But to me, the real concern is that we lost our special team coordinator, I believe, to the NFL. And so, is there going to be any sort of drop off in how special teams play and how they perform? I feel like our punter, Alex Smith, is, I feel like that's, pretty solid there. He's been a fabulous punter for us the last 2 seasons. But yeah, I think to me, the biggest question mark that we have is at the field goal kicker position.
Well, Matt, now that spring practice is over, which position group or groups do you think is the most concerning heading into the season?
Most concerning, I think we just touched on it. I mean, probably, the linebackers and safeties. Again, just not so much concerning as just like some unknowns there.
Cody, in today's age of NIL, revenue sharing, and the transfer portal, how have you seen that change Georgia Southern's recruiting philosophy?
Well, obviously, you gotta hit the transfer portal to fill holes that you have in your team, right? So I feel like they've done a great job at getting a good high school base to develop young men, and where they feel like they've had holes or transfers themselves that lead to go into bigger schools. They've used the portal in a way to kind of fill those holes. So again, I think this past recruiting cycle, I think we had 22 high school recruits and 6 or 7 transfers, maybe a little bit more. I'm probably wrong on those numbers, but that's about where they're at.
Sounds right.
But no, I feel like the way that they are utilizing the portal and how their philosophy for recruiting, I feel like, is how you want it to be when you're trying to build, not just to win now, but to win, for many, many seasons.
A sustained product, yeah.
Yep.
Well, Matt, how do you feel like the staff there at Georgia Southern's doing navigating the portal?
Really well. Yeah. I mean, I think they found some kind of hidden gems, if you will, like you mentioned, Bunkley Shelton and some guys like that. Again, really excited about like Camden Brown. So if he, even halfway lives up to the expectation and the hype that's being built around him. But like Cody said, yeah, it's a good balance of like high school guys with not overloading on portal. I think, we certainly relied on the portal heavier early in the Clay Helton era. Certainly on offense, I would say, because we were doing that 180 from an option to an air raid. And then certainly on the quarterback position, right, we had, back-to-back one and done transfers and Calvin Treese and Davis Brin. And then now this will be our second year with JC French at the helm. So, I think it's developing really good. It's kind of like a healthy, they're using it very healthy.
Cody, what do you think the main strength of this 2025 team is?
Oh, that's a great question. I think with it comes to the offense, it's going to be the receiving group and probably include the tight end group and with that as well. In terms of defense, it's got to be the front four, the interior line. And I think that's where the strength of this team is, and how they play is how we'll go.
Well, Cody, what does success look like for the Eagles in 2025?
Undefeated and in the playoff.
Matt?
Realistic answer, I think a realistic answer is that we are competing for the Sun Belt, and that we win the East, and that we're in the championship game. I think if you were to ask a lot of our fans, that's where their expectations are. You've seen a steady progress, a steady improvement year over year in the first 3 years, and now it's time to go out and legit compete for the title.
Well, Matt, is there a crucial point in the schedule, a stretch of games that you're really got circled on the calendar in order to achieve that success that Cody talked about in competing for the Sun Belt Championship, being there and winning it?
Yeah, September 27th at James Madison. That's the game. That's the season, in my opinion. I mean, if you really want to boil it down to one game, obviously we've got to win the other ones. The thing that we've struggled with in the past is when we've had things in our control, right? Control our own destiny. We've crapped the bed, right? With losses last year against Troy and Old Dominion. We've got to beat the teams that we should beat on paper this year, but we also have to beat those like toss-ups or even in those games where maybe we're not favored. And yeah, September 27th, James Madison, opener of Sun Belt play. So it comes at you fast. Obviously a very tough place to play up there in Harrisonburg. But yeah, to me, that's the game. But then, yeah, like, string of games, obviously going into late in the season. We have struggled up until last year, arguably a little bit into last year as well, closing out the season, right? Like I said, we went into last year winless in the months of November and December. And we obviously changed that last year, going 2-2, I believe. But yeah, we've got to close out strong. So that final stretch against App State, who we don't play in the final game of the season this year, that's a change. But Coastal at home, Old Dominion at home, and Marshall on the road.
Yeah, and just to add, I would say coming off the buys, we've struggled with that under Helton as well the last couple of seasons. And so we need to win those games.
Well, Matt and Cody, we've covered a lot of ground today. Is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 Georgia Southern Eagles football team?
No, not for me. I mean, I think we're both, Cody and I, are excited for this season, cautiously optimistic. We had 7 players on the first or second team, all Sun Belt. That's the most ever in our history. So there's a lot of hype around this team. We were picked to finish second behind James Madison in the East, like I mentioned. But I would say a lot of hype around this. But cautiously optimistic for the season and hope that we can turn the corner and, like Cody said, at least stamp our place into the conference championship game, if not bring home a title.
Yeah, just to
Matt?
piggyback off that, I would probably say that the only thing that we haven't touched on is there's been some position coaches that we've had to add that we've lost. I think defensive line, linebacker, as well as outside receiver, inside receivers coach. And so it'll be interesting to see if there's any drop off at those positions. But no, I think just to confront or to talk about what Matt said, I think there's a very high optimistic, but cautiously optimistic expectation for the Georgia Southern Eagles this year.
Well, Matt, Cody, we want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it. But before we let you guys go, we want to give you guys an opportunity to share with our listeners where they can find your work, maybe some things that you guys are working on. You guys talked about some stuff going live soon in YouTube. What do you got coming up and what are you working on?
Yeah, so we will be launching probably by the time this out, our season 8, episode 1 should be out on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, but as well as YouTube. So we are starting that this year, YouTube channel. You can find it with GATA Talk or GATA Talk Podcast should pop up. You'll see the blue Georgia Southern helmet. And yeah, so excited to introduce the video component. Going to be doing a lot more kind of marketing and stuff. Hoping to do some more interviews. Is typically just Cody and I doing game recaps and previewing opponents and all that fun stuff. But hoping to bring on a lot of good fan podcasts within the Sun Belt. So hoping to bring on some of them and possibly some other special guests like coaches and athletes, former players, all that this year as well.
All right. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Amazon Music, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.
Yeah.